Welcome back to this environmental series on CNC3 with my guest, Her Excellency Ms. Karen MacDonald, High Commissioner for Canada to Trinidad and Tobago. Well, welcome back. I want to get going and start talking about industries. Apart from all our colonial legacies, we also share in common that, we depend on natural resources. And unfortunately, both of our countries have been hugely criticized for our high carbon dioxide emissions. Now, do you think that our countries should actually lobby other countries and say, well, this is part of our mainstay, or do you think that we should try and reduce them?
Well, I think there's a global recognition that we have to tackle this problem. There's no way out of it. It's very complex. There are no easy solutions, but we can't ignore it. Canada does have some particular factors to deal with. We are the second largest country in the world, and so we have huge expanses, and that means transportation costs for shipping and just general travel. We also have extreme weather, as you would know, having lived in Canada. So we can have 35 degrees above in the summer time and 35 degrees below zero in the winter time, so that increases energy costs for heating and air conditioning, for example. But we're taking the issue seriously. We're active on the international stage. We're party to Copenhagen. We've made commitments to reduce our emissions by 2020. We're working closely with the US on that effort because our economies are so intertwined with the US. We're doing other things. We're trying to reduce dependence on coal in our electricity generation. We're trying to increase our use of renewable energies. We're expanding our parks network. So there's a lot we're doing. Every country has to decide for itself how it's going to reduce its emissions and on what timetable, but I think it's certainly too serious a matter to ignore.
I imagine that there are very strong lobby groups in Canada as well, wanting to reduce the emissions.
Yeah, there are. Our environmental NGOs are extremely strong, and our public demands it as well.
Right. Well, let's talk about you've got an investment in oil extraction from tar and sand deposits. So Canada has been relatively easy in terms of environmental regulation, I assume this. And I still think that you must be better than us because we have practically no environmental regulation when it comes to our energy industries, and we've got 95 in Point Lisas. Now, how would you respond to the claim by environmentalists and others that you've been very slack in terms of your regulations in these extraction industries?
Well, we're an energy producer, a big energy producer. We export a lot, particularly to the United States. So we do rely a lot on harvesting of those natural resources. We're trying to do it in the most ecologically sustainable way we can, and government is working closely with industry to constantly improve on how we do that. I would counter the claim that we're very lax in that area. The oil and gas industry in Canada, and particularly the oil sands industry, is actually highly regulated and has to account to the Canadian public for how they get that resource out of the ground. Just to perhaps give you just a couple of examples that will show you how robust the regulatory framework is. Alberta, where most of the tar sands are located, was the first jurisdiction in North America to impose a carbon tax. So the oil sands producers have to pay $15 per ton of CO2 produced into a technology fund that then looks for better, more innovative solutions to the problems. The air around the oil sands is consistently rated as good, which is better than some of the major North American cities. These industries recycle about 80 to 90% of the water that they use, and they are allowed to put zero process-affected water back into the waterways. Land reclamation, they are required post-production to make sure that the land is returned to the state it was in before. So while you do see some of these pictures that look quite stark of the actual operations, when they're finished the operations and they return that land to the pre-production state, you'd be amazed at how it looks. You would never know that such a mining operation had gone on there.
Now, you're a regulatory body. Is it government controlled? Is it independent? Is it manned with scientists? How does it work?
It's mostly government, but industry also does some self-regulation. Of course, there are scientists and researchers involved. We also find that the NGOs are part of the regulatory and monitoring process, and they are, as you've noted, they're always lobbying for us to do better. And I think we recognize that we always can do better. There's always room for improvement. The oil sands are relatively new resource for us, so we're learning as we go how to do it in a more ecologically sustainable manner.
Okay, and do you find that in terms of the regulations that the public is reported to from time to time? I think this is a big problem in Trinidad and Tobago, that we say we have regulatory bodies, but nobody actually reports to us. Mm-hmm. Is there a system so that anybody off the street in Canada can walk in and say, I want to know what's happening in our industry?
Mm. I'm not absolutely familiar with that. But I do believe that there are reporting and monitoring mechanisms. We also have a very, very strong Freedom of Information Act in Canada, where any member of the public can make a request on anything that's governed, that comes under government regulation. And so, yes, in that sense, Joe Q Public could call someone to account and ask to see their reports.
Well, that's excellent news, and we hope Trinidad and Tobago moves that way. We do need to take a short break. We'll be right back with more on this environmental series on CNC3. Stay with us.